Welcome to the Deep Dive. This week, we're really digging into the message from Sunday, who's incredibly rich, wasn't it? Based on Ruth, chapter 3, verses 1 to 11.
It really was. The title itself, The Prepared Path, The God Who Never Rests, kind of sets the stage for something profound.
Definitely. And our goal here, for this deep dive is to unpack those insights. We want to look at the practical stuff, the things you can actually take away and apply to your life, drawn from the pastor's reflection on faith and guidance.
And that core idea of God working, constantly working, even when we feel like he's silent or distant.
Yeah, that feeling of the signal being lost, which we'll get into. So the discussion really centered on finding security, finding peace, but maybe not in the way we usually think.
Right. Not necessarily in changing our circumstances, but more in recognizing God's active hand, his providence, even when life feels completely off the rails, like the GPS dropping out.
Exactly. That's the mission then.
Yeah.
Connect these deep truths from the sermon to our everyday walk. How does Ruth's story help us now?
Let's jump in. It's about making that connection clear and really actionable.
Okay, so let's start with that GPS analogy the pastor used. I think everyone could relate to that.
Yeah.
Driving somewhere unfamiliar, maybe those winding roads up near Westchester.
Mm-hmm. Totally dependent on the technology.
Right. And then suddenly, nothing. The signal's gone, the map freezes, that little wave of panic.
Well, absolutely. It's that immediate sense of, okay, now what? We're so used to having constant direction, constant feedback.
But the point made was, if you drive those roads often enough, something else happens. You start to gain this weird kind of confidence.
Yeah, you learn that even if you drift a bit, even if you take a wrong turn for 5, maybe 10 minutes, the signal will come back. The GPS reroutes you. You trust it'll get you there eventually.
You're not truly lost, just temporarily disconnected.
Precisely. And that was the bridge to faith, wasn't it? How often do we hit those points in life where the path just seems blocked?
All the time. Prayers seem to go unanswered. You can't see the next step. And the question becomes, God, where are you? I've lost the signal.
And we often think faith means always having a clear signal, always seeing the map perfectly laid out.
But that's not what the message suggested.
No. The definition that came through was that prepared faith is about not losing your ultimate direction, even when the immediate signal is gone. It's this radical certainty, this deep down knowledge that even when you can't see him or hear him, God is still guiding. He's working out the reroute.
That's a big shift, because our culture screams for instant results, constant updates, holding on to something unseen when everything you can see seems to contradict it. That's hard. It feels almost passive.
Well, it feels passive if we think faith means us being in control and seeing the whole plan. But maybe faith is actually about trusting the one who does have the plan.
Surrendering the need to see the map and trusting the map maker.
Exactly. That's why Hebrews 11.1 is so key here. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. It's not wishful thinking. It's an active, internal holding fast to truth.
So practically speaking, when we're in that signal loss phase, maybe it's waiting on a job or a relationship issue that's just stuck or prayers that feel like they hit the ceiling, prepared faith means we keep moving forward, maybe slowly, but with this underlying conviction. Believing the path is still prepared, the signal will reconnect.
Yes. It changes everything. You're not just waiting anxiously, you're moving confidently, even if tentatively. You trust the unseen work that's happening. You're not abandoned. You're just in a phase where you have to rely on the guide more than the visible path.
Okay, that makes sense. Trusting the hidden mechanism.
Ugh.
So we have this idea of trusting the future guidance. But the sermon then shifted, didn't it, to tangible evidence of God's provision, looking back at Ruth chapter 2.
Right. Focusing on Ruth gleaning in Boaz's field, it's important to remember what gleaning actually involved. It was hard, backbreaking work.
Just picking up the leftovers, basically, to survive.
Exactly. And the context provided was crucial here. Under the law, the poor could glean, but the average daily amount someone could gather, working all day long. It was about 5 pounds of barley.
5 pounds. Okay. That's what she could reasonably expect.
That was the baseline, but what does the text say she gathered?
30 pounds.
30. I mean, just pause on that. That's not just a little extra. It's 6 times the average amount, roughly 13 to 15 kilograms. This wasn't just a good day.
No, this was extraordinary. It feels like a direct intervention.
Think about it in today's terms. The pastor gave that comparison. If a day laborer doing that kind of work earns, say, $150, Ruth effectively walked away with the equivalent of about $1,000 worth of grain.
Wow. For a foreign widow, someone on the margins entitled only to scraps.
Right.
That's life-changing provision. It completely flips the script on scarcity.
It does, and apparently the Hebrew word used to describe the amount actually carries this meaning of unexpected, extraordinary abundance. It wasn't just effort, it was grace, piled on top of effort.
God giving in a way that just blows past our human calculations of what's fair or possible or earned.
It's a moment of pure wonder. And then imagine Ruth walking home. She must have been exhausted, right? Aching all over.
Definitely. Carrying 30 pounds of grain wouldn't be easy.
No. But can you imagine the joy, the physical weight, the burden must have been completely overshadowed by this sense of incredible blessing. The ache was real, but I bet the gratitude, maybe even humming a song of praise, was just unstoppable. She knew this was a gift.
And this gift, this tangible evidence, it didn't just stop with Ruth. It flowed right over to Naomi.
Absolutely. This was the turning point for Naomi. Remember, she was bitter, discouraged, telling people to call her Mara. She felt abandoned by God.
Yeah, her faith was really struggling.
But then Ruth comes home, not with the expected 5 pounds, but with this massive, undeniable sign of God's favor, 30 pounds of barley. Seeing that clear, physical evidence of God's guidance and provision, it just snapped Naomi back. It restored her spirit, her strength.
It shows that God cares about our whole lives, doesn't it? Not just our spiritual state, but our physical needs too. Sometimes that tangible provision is exactly what we need to reconnect that signal of faith.
Exactly. It's not always a mystical experience. Sometimes it's a job offer landing at the right time, or an unexpected check, or healing. Something concrete that says, see, I'm still here, I'm still working. Naomi's questions. Where did you glean? Who showed you favor? They come from a place of renewed awe. Tangible grace woke up her weary faith.
Okay, so Naomi's faith is reignited by this abundance. And that leads directly into chapter 3, where she starts planning for Ruth's future. She says, my daughter, I must find a home for you.
So that you may have a secure and happy life.
Huh?
Or, as the message unpacked, find a place of rest for you.
Right. And the pastor really emphasized that secure and happy. The Hebrew word nuach meant more than just comfort or getting remarried.
Much more. It meant finding her rightful place, getting back onto the path God had prepared. A place grounded in God's covenant love, His grace. Naomi had found her own nuke, her rest in seeing God's provision, and now she wanted that for Ruth. It was a statement of faith. Okay, we're done just surviving. We're stepping into God's intended security.
And right after declaring this intention for security, Naomi gives Ruth these very specific instructions. Wash yourself, put on perfume, dress in your best clothes. On the surface, it sounds like getting ready for a date.
It does, but the insight shared was that this was deeply symbolic, a spiritual act.
How so?
It was about shedding the past, washing off the dust of grief and hardship. Putting on perfume and best clothes wasn't just cosmetic, it signified proclaiming a new reality, deciding that the identity of grieving widow or struggling foreigner would no longer define her.
It's like taking off the old garments of sorrow and pain.
Exactly. It's a deliberate choice to say, my past pain won't dictate my future. It's an act of stepping into a renewed existence.
That resonates, you know. We all carry symbolic garments, don't we? Maybe it's the feeling of failure after a job loss, or guilt over something we did, or resentment in a relationship. It's hard to take those off.
It is, but that's the spiritual process being highlighted. It reminded me of Isaiah 61.3, beauty for ashes, oil of joy for mourning, a garment of praise instead of a faint spirit. Ruth changing her clothes was like changing her status, actively participating in God's plan for her redemption.
And when we, metaphorically clothe ourselves in Christ's grace, we're doing something similar, making a daily choice to live out of that new identity, not the old wounds.
I think that's precisely the application. Putting off the old self, the old hurts, and putting on the new self, defined by grace.
Now, underpinning all of this Ruth's actions, Naomi's planning, Boaz's response is this key Hebrew word, hesed.
Ah, yes, hesed. It came up again and again. It's so much more than just kindness.
Right. It's more like covenant loyalty, steadfast love, mercy.
All of those. It's kindness that goes way beyond what's required. The message used the idea of giving 130% effort.
130%. Explain that.
Well, think about Ruth. She showed hesed to Naomi. 100% effort might have been staying in Moab and helping Naomi there, but leaving her home, her people, her gods, to fully commit to Naomi in a foreign land, that's the extra 30% going above and beyond.
Okay, and now Naomi is showing that same hesed back to Ruth. by seeking this secure future for her, even when maybe Naomi herself is still vulnerable.
Exactly. She's reciprocating that same level of mercy and loyal commitment, considering what's truly best for Ruth. It's this cycle of overflowing grace.
How does that contrast with, regular human kindness? Ours often feels conditional, transactional maybe.
I think that's the crucial difference. Our kindness often depends on getting something back, right?
Yeah.
Or at least being appreciated. If someone doesn't respond the way we expect, we might pull back.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
But Hesed flows from God's covenant love, which is unconditional. It keeps going regardless of the response. It is that 130% giving more, serving more, loving more, even when it's difficult or seems undeserved.
So applying Hesed in our lives, at work, at home, in our communities, means not just doing the bare minimum.
Right. It means choosing to give that extra measure of grace, loyalty, and kindness, especially when our human instinct is to withdraw or keep score. It means showing kindness in that argument even when you feel wronged. It means sticking with a commitment even when it gets tough.
That's challenging.
Yeah.
Because our default is often self-protection.
It is. Hesed calls us to mirror God's character, his unwavering, overflowing kindness, particularly in those places where our love tends to be the most conditional. It's essential for restoration.
Okay, so Ruth, embodying this Hesed and following Naomi's Hesed-driven advice, takes this incredibly bold step. She goes to the threshing floor at night and lies at Boaz's feet. This part can feel awkward to modern ears.
It can, but the sermon was clear. This wasn't about seduction or manipulation. It was an act of profound humility and courageous obedience. It was grounded in faith.
She wasn't trying to force the issue herself.
No, she recognized her own powerlessness, her vulnerability, and instead of trying to scheme, she placed herself entirely under Boaz's authority and protection. Lying at his feet symbolized complete trust that he, guided perhaps by God, would act righteously.
It seems like that very humility, that trust, is what opened the door for God to work through Boaz.
I think so. And it highlights that obedience, true obedience, isn't always about feelings. The pastor made that point. It's a decision.
Right. We don't always feel like obeying or humbling ourselves or serving or waiting patiently.
But true obedience says, okay, Lord, I don't fully get this, and I might not feel like it, but I choose to follow your guidance, your will, as best I can understand it. That decision, that act of will, is what keeps us on the prepared path, especially when the signal feels lost.
And Ruth's obedience leads to this revelation of Boaz as the kinsman redeemer. He steps up, acknowledges her value even though she's a Moabitess, an outsider, and plans to bring her into the family, into the covenant lineage. It's a powerful picture.
A very powerful foreshadowing, because Boaz is the human redeemer in the story, but he points us towards the ultimate truth, which is that the true redeemer, the one who ultimately bears our weakness, rescues us from every crisis, and delivers us even from death itself, is God.
God himself.
Yes. Scripture consistently points to this. Think of Job saying, I know that my Redeemer lives, or Isaiah 54:5, for your Maker is your husband, the Lord Almighty is his name. The Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. God is our Savior, our Helper. He takes full responsibility for us. Boaz is just a type, a shadow of the real thing.
Seeing Boaz acting reminds us God is always acting on our behalf, doing what we can't do. But let's circle back to that final crucial verse from the sermon, Ruth 3.08. Naomi tells Ruth to wait.
Wait, my daughter, until you learn how this matter turns out, for the man will not rest until he has finished this today.
The man will not rest. That phrase just lands with such comfort.
It's the core assurance, isn't it? Ruth is told to wait, and waiting can be agonizing, filled with uncertainty. But she's given this promise. Boaz is on it. He won't stop until it's resolved.
And the implication is staggering. If a flawed human redeemer like Boaz is that committed, that tireless in pursuing Ruth's restoration,
how much more can we trust the divine Redeemer? How much more certain is God's tireless labor on our behalf? Even when we're waiting, even when we feel anxious or discouraged, the message is crystal clear. God does not stop. He never rests.
It changes the nature of waiting, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Ruth wasn't just passively sitting around. She had already acted in courageous obedience. Her waiting now was an act of trust, knowing things were in motion even though she couldn't see them.
Exactly. She could rest because Boaz was working.
Yeah.
We can rest because God is working, even in the silence, even in the signal loss. He is already mobilizing resources, already arranging the outcome, already securing our redemption.
He never rests in his care for us. He's always preparing that path, providing that unexpected abundance, working things out in ways we probably can't even imagine.
And our part, It's to trust him, obey him as best we can, and keep walking that path. He's prepared, resting in the knowledge of his unending labor for us. Hashtag, tag, outro.
That is, well, it's an incredible source of peace, isn't it? Just knowing that those silent periods, those times the signal feels lost, they aren't abandonment. They're actually invitations to trust the hidden work, the divine providence that's always active.
Mm-hmm. Knowing our needs are being met, often in ways that exceed all expectation, like Ruth's harvest, by a God who literally never stops working on our behalf.
It really reframes the struggle.
It does, and it brings us back to that concept of hesed, that 130% commitment, that unconditional kindness rooted in God's own character. If we take that seriously, maybe here's a thought to carry forward.
Yeah.
Think about one specific area in your life right now. Maybe it's a relationship that's strained, or a commitment at work or in the community that feels draining, where your kindness feels conditional.
Right, where you feel like pulling back.
Exactly. What would it look like just this week to intentionally invest that overflowing, unexpected 130% hesed into that situation? To act with extraordinary kindness, loyalty, or grace without expecting anything specific in return? How might that change things?
That's a powerful challenge, moving from transactional kindness to transformative hesed.
Let that be something we can all explore as we walk the prepared path this week.